When you hear the word antiques, what pops into your head? Dusty attics? Maybe some stuffy old shop? Well, it's time to toss that image right out the window. Today, we're diving into the really exciting modern world of investing in collectibles. And trust me, it's a landscape that's way more about smart moves than just forgotten family heirlooms.
So just how big are we talking here? Well, to put it in perspective, the global market for antiques and collectibles is currently valued at $500 million. Yeah, this is not some niche little hobby anymore, it's a serious economic force. And it's not slowing down, not at all. In fact, projections show this market is on track to double in the next decade. And this growth, it's being supercharged by a few things. People wanting to diversify their investments, a huge wave of nostalgia, and a whole new range of fascinating items hitting the market.
And that old stereotype? It's being completely shattered. With a boom of online marketplaces, a full 20% of all sales are now happening digitally. This has thrown the doors wide open for a whole new generation. The average age of buyers is actually dropping, making the whole scene more dynamic and accessible than ever before.
So you might be asking, why is all this happening right now? Well, in this first section, we're going to look at the perfect storm of reasons that are driving this new golden age of collecting.
All right, let's say you're interested. You're thinking about jumping in. So where do you even start? The very first step is also the most personal one, choosing your niche. This is where the fun really begins.
I mean, it is a vast world out there. You've got everything from classic cars to Pokemon cards, so it can feel a little overwhelming. But trust me, finding your focus is absolutely key to getting started on the right foot.
To help you narrow it down, just start by asking yourself 3 pretty simple questions. First, what do you genuinely love? Your passion is what's going to keep you going. Second, what's your budget? And be honest with yourself. And finally, think about space. A collection of vintage arcade machines is going to require a bit more room than, say, a folder of rare stamps.
Okay, once you've got a niche in mind, the next big step is to understand what actually makes an item valuable. And spoiler alert, it's not just about being old. So let's decode some of these secrets.
The first, and maybe the most important concept you need to get your head around, is something called provenance. So what in the world is it? The easiest way to think about provenance is as an item's official biography. It's the paper trail, the documented history of who's owned it, the original box, old receipts, service records, even a letter from a past owner. All these things build a credible story and prove it's the real deal, which can send its value soaring. Now here's a perfect example of provenance in action. This ring belonged to Vivian Leigh, the star of Gone with the Wind, and it was a gift from her husband, the legendary actor Laurence Olivier. That incredible story, that direct connection to 2 Hollywood icons, is exactly why it sold for such a staggering amount of money. So beyond a great backstory, there are 2 other key elements. The first one is pretty straightforward: rarity. How many of these things are actually left in the world? And the second is what experts call the X factor, that unique, kind of hard to define quality that just makes an item cool, desirable.
And check this out for a perfect example of rarity driving value. The Apple I was the very first product Apple ever sold. Now, a few hundred were made, but today it's estimated that only about 15 of them are still functional. That incredible scarcity is what turns a piece of old tech into a 6-figure asset. So how can you start thinking like an appraiser? Well, you can follow 3 key steps. First, always check the comps. What have similar items sold for recently? Second, hunt for any maker's marks or signatures to figure out where it came from. And third, be ruthless about condition. Seriously, every little chip, crack, or scuff mark matters.
All right, we have covered the how. So now let's get into the what. And let me tell you, the range of things people are collecting today is broader and more exciting than it has ever been.
You see, today's market is really a tale of 2 different worlds. On one side, you've got those timeless, traditional investments like fine art and luxury watches. But on the other, you've got these emerging sectors like rare video games and designer fashion that are pulling in a whole new generation of collectors.
So what about the returns? I mean, is this actually a good investment? While nothing is ever a sure thing, the right collectibles can be pretty darn rewarding. For example, stable assets like fine art and classic cars have historically yielded around 10% a year, which looks pretty good compared to a standard savings account, right?
But, sometimes value isn't just about history or how rare something is. Sometimes a completely new story gets created that transforms the asset in a single moment.
This has to be the ultimate example of that X factor.
When this Banksy painting literally self-destructed just moments after being sold, the artist didn't destroy its value, he created an entirely new piece of performance art, now called Love is in the Bin. The shock, the story, the sheer nerve of it all, it likely doubled its worth on the spot. Just amazing.
Now, it is so easy to get caught up in the excitement of stories like that, but it's absolutely crucial to approach this as a real investment, and that means you have to understand the potential downsides.
You've got to go into this with your eyes wide open. Remember these risks. This market is totally unregulated, so there's no official safety net if a deal goes bad. Fads can disappear just as quickly as they show up. I mean, remember the NFT craze? Also, a clumsy repair job can totally destroy an item's value, and proving something is authentic isn't always a walk in the park.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're collecting fine wine or rare video games. The entire market, the whole shebang, boils down to one fundamental economic rule: supply and demand. The value of anything is determined by how many of them there are versus how many people want one. Simple as that.
And really, that brings us to the final thought here. After everything we've looked at, from priceless stories to wild new markets, it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What forgotten item with its own unique history and its own rarity might just be sitting up there, waiting in your attic to be rediscovered?